All right, thank you folks, and welcome to our college basketball free pick video here today for Wednesday, January 12th, 2022. My name is Brock Page, and I do sports picks for free right here on YouTube. I also have a website called brockpage.com where I share with you all the picks that I'm actually betting on personally. And believe it or not, I don't bet on every single game in real life like I do here on YouTube. Now, we have memberships on my website beginning at just $1.99, and the link for that package is in the description section below. It is not free content on that website, by the way. But anyway, let's go ahead and dive into our first game. We're going to start off with some Big East action. I'm talking about Villanova versus Xavier, 6:30 Eastern tip-off. Now, the Xavier Musketeers are -1.5 at home with a total at 137. Now, Xavier failed to cover in 2 out of their last 3 ball games, with one of those failures being a 13-point loss to this very Villanova team. Having said all that, though, that was the only game the Musketeers lost in their last 9 straight, and they also find themselves undefeated on their home court this year. Xavier's currently 9-0 straight up at the Cintas Center, and they successfully covered the number in 78% of those very home games. Nate Johnson's averaging over 12.5 points a game along with 3 boards and 46% shooting from three-land. This guy is lethal from downtown. Meanwhile, Jack Nunge is averaging 12 points a game himself along with 7 rebounds. Now, the Musketeers are averaging 79 points a game in front of their home fans. They've been very good offensively at home this year, and they're actually amongst the best offensive rebounding teams in the Big East. Now, defensively, on the other end of the court, Xavier's limiting their competition to just 37% shooting from the field. They're taking on a Nova team who's played some really good basketball here recently themselves, but they did lose their last 3 straight as the underdog. Now, the Wildcats have also done a lackluster job of shooting the basketball on the road. They're scoring only 67 points a game, and they're making just 39% of their field goals in that very same category. Now, when it comes to the total in this one, 3 out of Villanova's last 5 got over the line. And those were overs against the likes of DePaul, Seton Hall, and Creighton during that stretch. All conference opponents, all common opponents eventually. Meanwhile, Xavier saw 4 out of their last 5 get over the posted total themselves. I'm going to lean towards Xavier -1.5 in the over 137. Next matchup, it is going to be Clemson versus Notre Dame, 7 o'clock Eastern start time. Notre Dame's -2.5 with a total at 138. Now, the Fighting Irish are on a 5-game winning streak, and they handled the likes of Georgia Tech, Pittsburgh, and UNC during that span. Now, Notre Dame's also undefeated on their home court this season, and they're limiting their competition to just 63 points a game in front of their home crowd. Now, scoring-wise, Dane Goodwin is averaging 15 points a game, along with 5 rebounds and 43% shooting from three-land. Meanwhile, Blake Wesley is scoring over 14 points a game himself, along with 3 boards and a couple assists. Notre Dame is taking on a Clemson squad who's playing just .500 basketball away from home this year, and they actually got beaten in 6 out of their last 8 meetings with the Irish. And although the Tigers have played some really good basketball in many different spots, they've lost 4 out of their last 6 ball games as the official underdog. Now, when it comes to the total in this one, Clemson went 6-3 to the over in their last 9 ball games, and those were overs against the likes of Virginia, Drake, and Miami. Meanwhile, Notre Dame saw their last 4 straight get over the posted number themselves. I'm going to lean toward Notre Dame -2.5 in the over 138. Next ball game, more ACC action. I'm talking about Duke versus Wake Forest, 7 o'clock Eastern tip-off. Duke's -6 with a total at 151.5. Now, the Blue Devils failed to cover in their last 2 straight, with one of those failures being an outright loss to Miami. Having said that, though, Duke still got the W in 12 out of their last 14 ball games this year, and they're amongst the best scoring teams in the nation. Paolo Banchero's averaging over 17 points a game, along with 7 boards and a couple assists. Meanwhile, Wendell Moore Jr. scoring 16 points a game himself, along with 5 boards and 4 assists as well. Now, no real surprise here. The Blue Devils are scoring 83 points a night as a team, and they're also making nearly 49% of their field goals. I guess you could describe this team as an offensive juggernaut. Now, they're taking on a Wake Forest squad who's had a tough time covering the point spread here recently. The Deacs have failed to cover in 5 out of their last 6, and they allowed 78 points a game in those failures to cover. Now, Wake Forest has also had a real tough time with Duke in recent meetings, losing 9 out of their last 10 games against the Blue Devils. So if you're into historical trends, that particular, stat is leaning toward Duke backers here. And as good as Wake Forest has been offensively, they've actually struggled getting defensive rebounds on their home court. Now, when it comes to the number in this one, Wake Forest saw contests with Miami, Virginia Tech, and Northwestern recently get over the posted number. They also went 60% to the over in their last 10 meetings with Duke. And speaking of the Blue Devils, they saw 5 out of their last 9 get over the line themselves. I'm going to lean toward Duke -6 in the over 151.5. All right, next contest, little SEC action. I'm talking about LSU versus Florida, 7 o'clock Eastern start time. The Florida Gators are -2.5 at home with the total at 139. The Gators did lose 5 out of their last 8 ball games, and they successfully covered the point spread in only 25% of those contests. Now, the Gators have been little threat shooting the 3-ball this year as well. They're making only 31% of their 3-pointers. Meanwhile, defensively on the other end of the court, they're also struggling grabbing defensive boards at home. Now they're taking on a very good LSU team who's won 14 out of their last 15 contests. And they've also successfully cashed in against the number in 80% of those ball games. Doing a great job cashing in tickets for their backers. And despite the absence of Xavier Pinson here this evening, I really don't think this team's going to skip a beat. It's Tari Eason, who's scoring over 16 points a night, along with 7 boards. Meanwhile, Darius Day is scoring over 14 points a game himself, along with 7 rebounds as well. And speaking of boards, LSU is in the top 15 in the entire country in offensive rebounding. Meanwhile, defensively, the Tigers are allowing only 56 points a game, and they're currently leading the nation in defensive field goal percentage. Now, when it comes to the total in this one, LSU went 80% to the under in their last 10 ball games. The Tigers are officially 12-3 to the under in their last 15 as well. Meanwhile, the Gators, they are 75% to the under in Gainesville this year. I'm going to lean toward the underdog LSU Tigers +2.5 and the under 139. Next contest, it is going to be Memphis versus UCF, and that's going to be a 7 o'clock Eastern tip-off. Memphis is -1.5 with the total at 149. Now, the Tigers are on a 3-game winning streak, and they've beaten the likes of Wichita State, Alabama, and Virginia Tech this season. Certainly an impressive resume. Having said that, though, these guys did fail to cover in 7 out of their last 9, and they're struggling on the road this season as well. As a matter of fact, Memphis is allowing 72 points a game away from their home court, and they failed to cover in 4 out of their last 6 in that very same category. They're taking on a Central Florida squad who won 5 out of their last 7 themselves, and they're also winning 75% of their home games. Darren Green Jr. averages 14.5 points a game, along with 2 boards and 42% shooting from three land. This guy has been really good shooting the ball from beyond the arc. Meanwhile, Darius Perry is scoring 11.5 points a night, along with 3 boards and 4 assists as well. Now, Perry is also drilling 43% of his 3 balls, another guy who's dangerous shooting from downtown. Now, when it comes to the defensive play of Central Florida, well, the Knights allow only 61 points per contest at home. And They're limiting their competition to just 28% shooting from three land. Now, total-wise, UCF saw overs against the likes of Michigan, Auburn, and Evansville this season. Meanwhile, Memphis saw 6 out of their last 8 get over the line themselves. I'm going to lean toward the UCF Knights plus 1.5 and the over 149. Next matchup, it is going to be Utah State versus Colorado State, and that's going to be an 8 o'clock Eastern tip-off. The Colorado State Rams are -6 with the total at 151.5. Now, the Rams are amongst the best scoring teams in the nation right now. They're averaging 84 points a game at home, and they're drilling 41% of their three-pointers there. Now, the Rams are also making 53% of their field goals at home as well, and they're currently ranking in the top 10 in the entire country in offensive three-point percentage. David Arati's drilling 42% of his three balls, 19.5 points a night for the guard. Meanwhile, John Tanji is drilling 50% of his three-pointers, and he's scoring nearly a dozen points a game as well. Tanji, one of the best three-point shooters in the country. Now, the Rams are currently in the top 10 in the nation in offensive field goal percentage. Meanwhile, defensively, these guys are amongst the best in the Mountain West in defensive boards. They're taking on a Utah State team who gives up 77 points a game away from home, and they failed to cover the point spread in 5 out of their last 8. This is a team who can potentially collapse on the defensive end of the court. Now, the Aggies have also gone just 1-3 against the spread in their last 4 contests as the official road team. When it comes to the scoring in this one, the Aggies saw 8 out of their last 9 ball games away from their home court get over the posted number. They're also 60% to the over in their last 10 meetings with Colorado State. Meanwhile, the Rams, on the other side of things, they saw overs recently against the likes of Northern Colorado and Creighton. I'm going to lean toward Colorado State -5 in the over 151.5. Next ball game, it is going to be Georgia Tech versus Boston College, 9 o'clock Eastern tip-off. BC's -2 with the total at 133.5. Now, Boston College got the W in 6 out of their last 9 ball games at home. 62 points per contest they allowed in those games. And when it comes to the scoring in this one, Mekhi Ashton Langford is averaging over a dozen points a game, along with 3 boards and 3.5 assists. Meanwhile, Jaden Zachary is drilling 51% of his three-pointers, and he's also averaging double-digit points a game. Now, when it comes to rebounding, Boston College is in the top 30 in the country in defensive boards per contest. They're taking on a Georgia Tech squad who's on a 3-game losing streak themselves, and they also dropped 7 out of their last 8. Now, the Yellow Jackets have also been amongst the worst covering teams in the ACC here recently. They covered in only 2 out of their last 10 ball games. Georgia Tech's averaging only 67 points a game offensively this season. When it comes to the total on this one, Georgia Tech went 6-1 to the under in their last 7 outings. Meanwhile, their opponents saw unders against the likes of Notre Dame, USF, and Utah this year themselves. So I'm going to go ahead and lean toward Boston College -2 in the under 133 and a hook. All right, next matchup, little Big Ten action. I'm talking about Maryland versus Northwestern, 9 o'clock Eastern start time. Northwestern is -5.5 with the total at 140. And despite their recent struggles, Northwestern did get the W in 6 out of their last 8 home games, and they're scoring nearly 80 points a night at the Welsh Ryan Arena. Pete Nance is scoring over 16 points a game, along with 7 boards and a couple assists. Nance is also drilling 45% of his 3 balls. This guy's been really good shooting from long range. Meanwhile, the best name in the business, Boo Buie. He's scoring over 14.5 points a game himself, along with a couple of boards and 5 assists. Now, defensively, the Wildcats are in the top 25 in defensive field goal percentage. They're also limiting their competition to just 36% shooting from the field in front of their home fans. Now, they're taking on a struggling Maryland squad who lost their last 3 straight themselves, and they also failed to cover in 6 out of their last 9. The Terps have also been little threat shooting the three ball this season, as they're making only 31% of their three-pointers. When it comes to the scoring in this one, 4 out of Maryland's last 6 did get over the posted number, and those were overs against the likes of Wisconsin, Iowa, and Florida. Meanwhile, Northwestern went 3-0 to the over in their last 3 straight. I'm going to lean toward Northwestern minus 5.5 in the over 140. Next matchup, NC State versus Louisville, 9 o'clock Eastern tip-off at the KFC Yum Center. I don't like Louisville, but Louisville is minus 6.5, totals 149. Now the Cardinals are 6-2 straight up at home, and they're doing a pretty good job defensively this season. That said, though, the Cards have been pretty bad covering the number here lately. They failed to cover in their last 5 straight. And they're also just 2-6 against the spread at the KFC Yum Center. That's the best name of an arena in the business, KFC Yum Center. Anyway, they're squaring off against a conference rival in NC State, who covered in 2 out of their last 3 despite their recent struggles. Now, the Wolfpack's also averaging over 76 points a game. They've been doing a pretty good job offensively this year, and they're led by Darian Seaborn, who's scoring over 20 points a game, along with 9 rebounds and 3 assists. Meanwhile, Jericho Helms is drilling nearly 40% of his three-pointers himself, and Helms is also scoring 14 points a game. Now, the Wolfpack's also doing a real nice job of getting offensive rebounds, and when it comes to the total in this one, NC State went 70% to the over in their last 10 outings, 69% to the over for the entire season. Meanwhile, Louisville saw 4 out of their last 6 get over the posted number themselves, 5-3 to the over in their last 8 meetings with NC State. If you're into historical trends, I'm going to lean toward NC State plus 6.5 in the over 149. Next contest, it is going to be TCU versus Kansas State, and that's going to be a 9 o'clock Eastern tip-off. K-State's minus 4 with the total at 137.5. But despite being favored by a couple of buckets here, K-State is on a 3-game losing streak, and they also failed to cover in 4 out of their last 7. The Wildcats are averaging only 69 points a game offensively, and they're amongst the worst in the Big 12 in home offensive rebounding. They're taking on a TCU team who won 10 out of their last 12. And they're also amongst the best rebounding teams in the entire country. As a matter of fact, the Horned Frogs are in the top 5 in offensive rebounding in the nation. And they're led by Emmanuel Miller, who's getting nearly 7 rebounds a night, along with double-digit points a game. And speaking of points, Mike Miles, he's scoring nearly 18 points a game himself, along with 3 rebounds and 4 assists. Of course, he is the team's leading scorer. And when it comes to defensive play in this one, TCU's allowing only 62 points per contest at any location, and they're limiting their competition to just 41% shooting from the field. Now, total-wise, 8 out of TCU's last 10 meetings with Kansas State fell under the posted number. TCU also saw games with Oral Roberts, Austin Peay, and Pepperdine fall under the posted total as well. Meanwhile, Kansas State went 60% to the under in their last 10 themselves. I'm going to lean toward TCU plus 4 in the under 137.5. Next matchup, it is going to be Virginia Tech versus the Virginia Cavaliers, and that's going to be a 9 o'clock Eastern start time. The Virginia Cavaliers are minus 1.5 with the total at 117. Now, the Cavaliers are averaging only 63 points a game offensively, and they failed to cover in 2 out of their last 4 ball games. Having said that, though, Virginia is one of the best defensive teams in the country, as they're limiting their competition to just 57 points a game on their home court. The Cavs are also holding their opponents to just 39% shooting from the field at the John Paul Jones Arena. Now, when it comes to the scoring in this one, Jaden Gardner is averaging 15 points a game, along with 7 rebounds. Meanwhile, Kihei Clark is drilling 43% of his shots from beyond the arc, 12 points a night for the guard. Now, they're taking on a Virginia Tech squad who lost 3 out of their last 4 ball games, and And they also posted a record of just 3-6 against the spread in their last 9. The Hokies score only 65 points a game away from their home court, and they've done a real lackluster job of rebounding offensively. Now, when it comes to the number in this one, Virginia Tech went 60% to the under in their last 10 outings, 5-2 to the under in their last 7 away from their home court. Meanwhile, the Cavaliers, on the other side of things, they saw outings recently against North Carolina, Clemson, and Providence fall under the posted number themselves. I'm going to lean toward the Virginia Cavaliers -1.5 and the under 117. Next ball game, it is going to be Cal versus Washington, 10 o'clock Eastern start time. The Washington Huskies are -1.5 with the total at 133. But despite being favored in this one, the Huskies lost 5 out of their last 7 ball games, and they currently have themselves a losing record at home. Now, the Huskies are shooting just 24% from beyond the arc at home this year, and they're also making just 36% of their field goals there. It actually makes them amongst the worst shooting teams in the entire nation. Now, Washington is officially 1-6 against the spread at the Alaska Airlines Arena. They're taking on a Cal team who's amongst the best covering teams in Division I right now. They're currently 8-2 against the spread in their last 10, and they're actually covering in 75% of their ball games for the entire season. Now, when it comes to offensive production, Andre Kelly, he's scoring 15 points a game for the Golden Bears, along with 8 rebounds a night. Meanwhile, Jordan Shepard is scoring over 14 points a game himself, along with a couple of boards and 2 assists. And when it comes to defensive play in this one, Cal's limiting their competition to just 37% shooting from the field when they travel. And when it comes to the total in this one, the Golden Bears saw 6 out of their last 8 fall under the posted number. And those were unders against the likes of UCLA, Arizona State, and Utah. A lot of unders in conference play there for those guys. Meanwhile, for Washington on the other side of things, they saw 4 out of their last 7 fall under the posted total themselves. I'm going to lean toward the Cal Golden Bears +1.5 and the under 133. And with that, guys, we're going to go ahead and jump into our next and final matchup of the show. It is going to be Boise State versus Nevada, and that's going to be a 10:30 Eastern tip-off. The Nevada Wolfpack is -1 with a total at 146.5. Now, the red-hot Nevada Wolfpack got the W in 6 out of their last 7 ball games, 5-1 straight up this year on their home court. Now, Nevada's scoring 81 points a night in front of their home fans, and they're led by Grant Sherfield, who's scoring over 18.5 points a game, along with 4 boards and 6 assists. And when it comes to shooting the 3 ball, well, it's 7-foot center Will Baker, who's actually draining almost 47% of his 3 balls. You almost wish that Will would take more shots during the game. He doesn't have a crazy amount of attempts this year, but he makes them count when he actually shoots them. I don't see that happen a lot. Only other guy that tall that makes that many 3-pointers in the NBA is like Joel Embiid. Maybe there's some other guys, Nikola Jokic as well. But anyway, they're taking on a Boise State team who's scoring only 64 points a game away from home. And when it comes to head-to-head matchups, the Broncos actually lost 9 out of their last 10 meetings with Nevada. Nevada's owned the Broncos here over the past couple of seasons. Now, total-wise, Boise went 6-3 to the under in their last 9 qualifying ball games. The Broncos are also 5-1 to the under in their last 6 away from home. Meanwhile, Nevada's 4-1 to the under in their last 5 at the Lawler Events Center themselves. I'm going to lean toward Nevada -1 and the under 146 and a hook. And with that, guys, we're going to jump into our quick pick recap, powered to you by my website at brockpage.com, where we are currently hitting at 60% in our last 15 NFL tier package picks. I like Xavier -1 over 137, Notre Dame -2.5 over 138, Duke -6 over 151.5, LSU +2.5 under 139, UCF +1.5 over 149, Colorado State -5 over 151 and a hook. Boston College -2 under 133.5. Northwestern -5.5 over 140. NC State +6.5 over 149. TCU +4 under 137 and a hook. Virginia Cavaliers -1.5 under 117. Cal Golden Bears +1.5 under 133. Nevada -1 under 146.5. And as far as all the other games go across the country, I like Michigan State -11.5 under 139. Radford +2 under 134 and a hook. Campbell -15.5 under 138. Western Carolina +13.5 over 150. Fordham +2.5 under 137. Cincinnati -11 over 144 and a hook. Furman -8.5 over 147. UNC Wilmington -1.5 over 141. Mississippi State -15 over 143. Hampton +9 over 136.5. Gardner-Webb -7.5 under 131. Wofford -8.5 over 145. Rhode Island -9.5 over 142. Vermont -11 over 142.5. Tulsa -3 under 134 and a hook. Morehead State -13 under 139.5. New Jersey Institute of Technology, NJIT, NJIT -1 under 139. Albany +2 under 134. Norfolk State -21 over 141. South Carolina, SC Upstate +3.5 under 134. Bradley -8 under 128.5. Drake -12.5 over 144. SMU -13.5 under 133. Missouri State -7.5 under 131. Wichita State -9.5 under 138. UConn -11 over 153.5. Arkansas -14.5 over 151. Cal Baptist -8.5 over 152. University of Pacific +6 over 141. And with my next and final free pick for the video, I'm going to lean towards Seattle -1 and the over 140.5. And with that, guys, that's going to do it for me. Don't forget to check me out on brockpage.com. Now, if you guys do end up getting a membership here today on my safe and secure website, just keep in mind you're going to get billed the day you sign up and then the first of every month if you continue to opt in. So if you do end up getting a membership here today on my website, you are going to get access to those picks all the way through the end of January. I always tell folks in every single video, the earlier in the month you sign up, the better. We have packages starting at just $1.99. But if you want to get access to every single pick that I give out on that website, you may want to think about signing up for my board member package, where board members get access to every single pick that I give out on that website all the way through the end of January as well. But most importantly, guys, I got to thank you for joining me right here on YouTube. I really hope you enjoyed all this great free content, all this great free information. And with that said, guys, happy Wednesday to you. Happy hump day to you. And I look forward to seeing you later on today on my website at brockpage.com.